shots of that garlic in the original art. You just
To nie rozmawiałem o czosnku.
in the pixel art, but it was there. So it was telling that they were really trying to achieve something very very grand with this art.
I'm not gonna lie, I never knew that they had garlic hanging in there. I mean, maybe a couple white sprites. I thought they were maybe candles, or who knows? No clue. But that makes me excited to go look around now and just like explore all of the areas in the game just to look at the new detailed art and see what was.
Well, you see it now too, because also we have the one new feature for the
Jeszcze
art.
tylko skrzeszenie Hearthstone'a.
Zoom camera.
No właśnie jestem ciekawy, jak te zmiany w Hearthstone'ie wpłyną na zainteresowanie Hearthstone'em.
It was something that I really felt strongly that like a lot of ARPGs that come out now all have a zoom feature. This would really get you up and close and personal with like your armor, your weapons, like everything, the runes.
Ja oceniam tą poprawę grafiki na maksymalnie 22,50 euro.
Current visuals. It's not even just a simple art swap. It is really the old game running underneath, because like Chris was mentioning, our new our graphics engine is running on top of the game.
Nic się nie zmieniło, dalej nie ma żadnych dat podanych.
Is running underneath. It's still following all the same data and rules and timings of everything. So we are still being true to that 25 frames per second of what the game is underneath, but rendering it in a way that has more frames per second.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that specifically, because when I go into Diablo 2, I'm thinking 25 FPS, and like you said, the game is built on that. My faster casting, my hit recovery, all of this stuff is built on.
Wiesz, że ostatnio był wyciek o 30 milionach graczy Hearthstone'a, co jest więcej jak pik WoWa, a ty mówisz. Ale co mówię?
With the server and everything like that runs on that cycle, and that hasn't changed. So we still have benchmarks in all of our content, say for animations of when a hit frame occurs, how long it can recover, and all of that. That all matches exactly. Now it can run.
Że gra jest do skrzeszenia.
And so modern games run on time, not frames. So we've done that, but all of the logic still runs on those same things. So
Masz rację, mylę się.
To occur, all of those things still happen at the exact same. And that was through no small effort, but it's super important, right? Because even if you can't see it right away, you feel it.
Myślę, że to 40 euro to spoko cena jest czosnek w 3D. Też mi się tak właśnie wydaje, nie? Gdyby ten czosnek nie był w 3D, to 35 to byłoby ok, nie? Ale że mamy czosnek w 3D, no to zdecydowanie 40 wydaje się być jak najbardziej spoko.
At greater directions, right? You have, I think it was 64 different squares around you that you would path to, and you'd have feet sliding. We've increased that, so now there's more granularity. Obviously it's 3D, your character can run straight, but underneath the hood, I mean, this is a game made.
Te utracone pliki Diablo 2 to pewnie kosztowały 40 euro, odnalazły się po latach. Nie za bardzo wiem, do czego to się odnosi.
Right? Like on the controller will still allow you to move small amounts. Because you push the stick a little bit, but it's still, you're either in a run state or a walk state. Stamina is still a thing. You're still on a grid. Like all of that logic, once again, is all being.
Może dorzucą cebulę 3D. Kurde, to mamy ten szynkę, cebulę, czosnek, jeszcze chleby dorzucili, masło.
It was very challenging because you only had a few of the frame counts basically make that animation. So it wasn't like a modern game where you have tons of different keys to make it very fluid animation. We had to really like maintain that.
Przecież, że do Runeterry dodają nowy region? Nie.
Posing was a big focus for us too. We wanted to get those.
Podobno nie dało się odnowić Diablo 2 kiedyś, to było wytłumaczone, a teraz nagle odnawiają nieźle. Nie będę się kusił. Czy myślisz, że Diablo 2 będzie tak jak z Warcraft 3 Reforged? Nie, myślę, że tak nie będzie.
Putting on, a scale mail, putting on a full plate mail, putting on a sacred armor, and seeing the character like have the different change and all of that. But some things still don't like.
Hearthstone będzie tracił na zainteresowaniu, ale gra w niego 30 milionów aktywnych graczy. Hightech, weź se i przeczytaj jeszcze o tych milionach, bo wiesz, coś tam przeczytałeś, złą cyfrę zobaczyłeś, nie do końca doczytałeś o co chodzi i teraz chodzisz i piszesz jakieś głupoty. Będzie crossplay, tak? Tonący brzytwy się łapie. O właśnie, kurde, nie? Blizzard upada, to musieli grę odnowić.
connected visual with the icon and the item that drops in the game, where before you had different visuals. That's really the only thing we pushed on.
A odnosi się do tego, że powiedzieli, że stracili asety do Diablo 2 i ciężko im zrobić remaster. Aha, okej.
Special kind of icon arts, right? And that is something we're actually
Co prawda sytuacja z Diablo 2 wygląda tak, że utracili cały projekt, jak tworzyli tą grę i musieli ją robić ze scratchy, które mieli po domach. I to było problemem, ale niech będzie, że asety stracili.
Of the cinematics in the game.
Yes.
Yes, we are. Yep, the entire full 28 minutes or
Dlaczego już nie nagrywasz runtery? Bo jej ludzie nie oglądają.
New high fidelity art. It's gonna look amazing, by the way. So
Była afera chyba, że Blizzard zgubił kod źródłowy Diablo 2 i twierdził, że nie zrobią remastera. Okej.
All of the audio has been remastered, as well as we've added additional, surround sound features. There's more ambient, there's more effects going on. It's just a richer experience if you want to play.
Zapisałeś się do bety? Tak.
Full setup. However, we have to use that measured hand as well with audio. There's just a lot of very, very iconic sounds that we really couldn't change, right? Like, if you put a skull into your inventory, that pop noise,
Don't change my skull sound.
Exactly, right? So there are certain things you're gonna, you'll hear. For like your footsteps running will have some variety. When the rain kicks in, it's going to have a lot more depth. When you go to the jungle, you'll hear a lot more life in those trees. But yeah, there's just some sounds we couldn't mess with, right?
With Blizzard, when we're creating new games, one of our design philosophies is to what we call find the fun. And when we were looking at D2 again, we very much felt like the fun is still there. So it's actually one of our core pillars for Diablo 2 Resurrected specifically was to keep the fun and keep it at its core. And because of that, we're looking at it more as a remaster at that point and like what can we do based on what the community wants or what features naturally are necessary for making this game run on modern day systems and things like that.
Szanse na powstanie remastera Diablo 2 są niewielkie, ponieważ Blizzard utracił kod źródłowy, uważają twórcy słynnej serii, czyli David Breivik, Eric Scheffer i Max Scheffer. Sprawdźcie sobie może te nazwiska i zastanówcie się jeszcze raz.
Speaking, from my experience or from some of my community's experience.
23 593 539 569. Okej, i co to jest za liczba?
To a remaster just seemed like the way to go because there's so many, like you said, there's so many of those tiny details within the game that overall when you add them up, create such a big part of the experience of the game. And remaking that.
Uważasz, że Runeterra umarła, czy w ogóle opłaca się w to grać? Jeżeli ci się podoba, no to czemu miałbyś nie grać? Aktywni gracze Hearthstone'a. A przeczytaj jeszcze raz, czy na pewno tacy aktywni, jeżeli mógłbym prosić.
And how it's like a lot of the pathing bugs and the, duds from the.
Ale coś w tym jest, kilka lat temu Blizzard dał oficjalnie jednoznaczny komunikat, że nic z Remastera 2. A dałbyś linka do tej informacji?
And what make the games.
My się bawimy wyszukiwanie informacji w necie.
It would change how the whole entire game plays. And so I felt like with Diablo 2, that's kind of.
Myślałem, że trochę ciekawszy będzie ten panel.
Keep some of those difficult details because then it ends up creating, the overall experience that we all know and love.
Yeah, we also felt that, for a game during its time back in 2000, based on limitations or everyone was still looking at strategy guides or just limited internet. It led to that kind of typical game design you see where there was a lot of mystery, discovery. So we felt like that was another part of part of keeping the fun, which was to maintain that discovery.
Czostek, czego jeszcze chcesz?
So speaking to maintaining and possibly changing, what are the pieces that did end up staying the same? Or, if it's easier to explain the other way, what are the pieces that were really changed to bring this remaster to life?
So, at its core, we want it to still be the same. So, right away, things like the balance, the monsters you see on the spawn rates, item drops, and things like that are the same. And what we're doing is trying to take any of the rough edges you see, compatibility issues, resolution issues, and obviously the art, improving the arts as well. All these kinds of things you come to know from
Są jakieś statystyki graczy Hearthstone'a i Runeterry? Nie wiem.
And when it comes to the features we added, this is probably the biggest area where we scrutinize so much is this addition straying too much? You know, does it still create the same
Z
gameplay?
tego co wiem, to jeden z innych pracowników na jakimś portalu społecznościowym.
Things like a shared
Kurde, przecież ja wam to przed chwilą pokazywałem.
use mule characters.
Ludki.
Shared stash, we felt
Remaster Diablo 2 raczej nie powstanie, ponieważ Blizzard utracił kod źródłowy gry. Uważają twórcy oryginału,
now the way that the
którzy nie pracują w studiu Blizzard od 10 lat.
you can't have your ladder characters mixing a stash with a non-ladder character.
Blizzard miał wydać remaster Diablo 2,
Characters, you know, can't use your online, but for the most part, we're like, people do this anyway with a mule character, so it's okay to give them this.
Oj,
That is like the greatest feature that you
ale coś źle że się kliknęło i stracili kod źródłowy.
and opening up
Pani serii czekali na zapowiedzianą... Czekajcie, weźmy to wyciszę. Na zapowiedzianą przez twórców odświeżoną wersję Diablo 2 okaże się, że gra nie powstanie. Programiści Blizzarda Max Schaffer, Eric Schaffer i David Breivik podczas ExileConu 2019. Trzech typów, którzy pracowali przy Diablo 2 w 2000 roku i nie pracują w Blizzardzie od ponad 10 lat, na konwencie, który jest związany w ogóle z konkurencyjną firmą i z konkurencyjną grą, opowiadali, co im się przytrafiło. Po, uwaga, 11 godzinach. No dobra, whatever. Stracili ble, programiści musieli coś tam. Tu nie ma tego, że Blizzard to powiedział. Tu powiedzieli ludzie, którzy pracowali nad tą grą 20 lat wcześniej i już nie pracują w Blizzardzie.
reimagined UI,
Ten artykuł jest w ogóle z dupy wzięty, bo jest,
what you come to expect. So you'll still have the classic globes on the HUD
bo jest o tym,
skill icons, the
że oni...
and all that.
Znaczy ja nie wiem w ogóle co to za artykuł, bo sytuacja z tym utraceniem tego kodu wyglądała tak, że jak oni tworzyli Diablo 2, to stracili cały kod źródłowy. Grę mało, bo nie mieli backupów i im się, nie wiem, dyski popaliły czy coś tam, whatever. I oni musieli tą grę z tego, co mieli na komputerach w domu, składać od nowa, przez co była zagrożona data premiery. I ta gra była zrobiona w jakiś tam, nie wiem, szybki sposób, czy coś w tym stylu. I ludzie, którzy nie pracowali w Blizzardzie od ponad 10 lat, twierdzili, że Blizzard nie zrobi tego. Więc nie gadajcie, że Blizzard coś powiedział.
already in a lot of mods where they've gone ahead and
W profesjonalnej firmie przepada kod źródłowy, niezłe science SC i FI. No faktycznie.
implement that as well. Because yeah, I don't think anybody like sitting
Ale to oni stworzyli tę grę. Blizzard chyba nie zmienił tej gry przez lata, prawda?
you know, and all of their charms and all of everything to figure out what is the number, how much do I have?
We've
A jeżeli chodzi już o tego Hearthstone'a,
So you can opt in. It is a feature you can turn off, which is one of the things we have to be careful of.
ty, fajnie to wygląda.
Where
Wow.
we're like, if you want this, you can turn it on, but you can also keep it off. This was actually something that we started looking into when we were adding controller support. There's a lot of paths that we could have taken with controller support. Obviously, for
A jeżeli chodzi o tego Hearthstone'a i o te 23 miliony aktywnych graczy,
you just plug a controller in for accessibility reasons.
total number of players worldwide.
But it's a PC
Nie, ta
first
grafika.
experience. Like for example, there's still an
Na tej akurat jest to normalnie napisane. To nie jest liczba aktywnych graczy.
Diablo 2.
To jest liczba osób, które się do gry zalogowała przez cały rok.
Something different.
And
Również
I think that's
osoby takie, które się zalogowały raz, które się zalogowały 2 razy, 3 razy, które się logowały tylko przy dodatkach, z ciekawości, na chwilę, na jedną grę i tym podobne rzeczy. To nie są osoby, które na co dzień, czy tam raz w tygodniu grają.
who go, don't touch this. Like that completely changes my game experience. And you know, if I'm speedrunning through the game or playing through whatever, I want to be able to go over and pick up the gold stacks and take that time, and that's more a part of the Diablo 2 experience for me. I want to jump.
Typowe roznoszenie fake info bez źródła, weryfikacji źródła i tyle.
We do. You just brought up console play.
Czy ja wam mogę powiedzieć coś o kodzie źródłowym Diablo 2 Remaster, ale jakbym powiedział, to by mnie ktoś mógł zabić, więc nie powiem nic.
And how you're gonna make that work. You already talked a little bit about like auto gold, having that to be a little more accessible. But when I think of Diablo 2, I think of a mouse going and clicking
Oh, yeah.
everywhere and how does this work on a
To
console?
say it wasn't a challenge would be a bold lie. So there's a couple things. For the most part, the game thinks you're still using a keyboard.
Chcę kupić kod źródłowy Cyberpunka? Nie.
We kept, that helped keep us on the rails, because we didn't want to be sacrificing, once again, that authentic experience, but we did want to make it more accessible, bring it to a modern audience. I mean, there are people who were born after this game came out that we want them to enjoy it and play it. And a lot of those people are used to, just more modern titles that could use a controller. Also, from an accessibility of just allowing you to plug in a controller helps for many other people to get to enjoy the game. The biggest thing I think that we are, the two big things we'll say. One is you're changing the way you play the game from being kind of an eye in the sky and telling your hero what to do by clicking on areas, to actually being your character and directing them. So pathfinding is gone, right? Because you're doing the pathfinding and things like that, which creates some very...
Fajnie to wyglądało.
For example, the sorceress's teleport is meant to teleport to wherever you click. So in that area, when you're playing on the console, we will have a kind of a default distance that you will teleport to. Whereas on the PC, you can click wherever you want. Same with Barbarian's Leap, although that one's interesting because it levels, but it's become very, very fun.
No, to jest właśnie to, co mówiłem. Kurde, czemu te urywki są takie
Item on the
krótkie?
ground that has a certain keyword. It's working so far, but you guys will be the ultimate judge of that.
Yeah, we've had a lot of talks back and forth.
No niby spoko to wygląda, tylko to takie strasznie mało...
A big challenge we had too was categorizing, all those 300 character skills, to see how each of them really play, to see what challenges there were. And yeah, like Rob mentions, the Necromancer Iron Golem is a favorite of ours to continuously talk about because of the various ways it can target. Also like a sorcerer's.
Ja słyszałem, że Runeterra umiera i chciałem poznać twoją opinię. Nie mam żadnej, nie interesuje się grą.
Druid at the campfire. We see a druid casting tornado. I have to ask though, even still, this includes Lord of Destruction, right? This is going to be a full encompassing remaster and not just classic or just a piece?
That's correct. Yeah, we are going to be including both the base Diablo 2 and the expansion Lord of Destruction as well. And we're even keeping the mode of playing non-expansion character as well, right? So you could still play a classic barbarian, for example, and things like that.
Okay, awesome. Because that was something I was also going to ask was, will there be classic mode? Because once again, when you go to the purist, you always have the people that go back all the way and they're like, classic is pure and that's it, and I won't play anything else.
Yeah, it was very much a mode we wanted to keep. Even based on popularity, it might not be as much, but it's still a part of the game, and it still leads to interesting ways of playing too, right? A lot of it's even data driven too, so like a lot of the reasons to keep it were pretty clear to us. Like, let's make sure we're not taking something away from this remaster.
I'd love to go ahead and start talking about some of the other features, or continue talking about some of the other features that you had mentioned before, because hearing each of these already has gotten me so excited for this game. And so what are some other little things that you felt could be changed, wouldn't change the whole flow of the game, but just improve it a little bit?
One thing we're looking into is making it easier to interact with your stash. So having quick keys to move to your stash is one thing versus like dragging the mouse to every time you want to move something to your stash. Other things we're looking at as well are like an item comparison tooltip. So in case you're looking at some other item, you can hold shift or whatever controller button is mapped, and then you can see what equipped items you have just for quick glances, things like that.
The item comparison is a great example of us adding it, but added it with a measured hand. So we don't suggest any gear for anybody. The gear in Diablo 2 is so quirky and different, and every class can use everything, that us recommending things like that actually was more confusing to people. So you hold shift and it's like, here's what you got equipped, here's what it is.
I think that's the great way to do it with Diablo 2, because I agree. I mean, I think that's one of the best parts about Diablo 2. The items are so fantastic, so unique in their own design, that it would be near impossible to have a tooltip that could actually recommend one or the other, because it's all so unique to every situation and character and skill build and everything.
We added 5 more languages, so that's a feature to a lot of people who speak those other languages. The whole front end is pretty much modernized now, so your character is much bigger, front and center, right in the beginning, and you'll have a backdrop of whatever act you're in, so that's streamlined. You can still, play online or offline, but that flow has been improved.
So what are your favorite changes that each of you have within the game so far?
There's a lot of fun. It's fun to see a lot of the art come to life with our new visuals. So for me, one of the things I've been waiting for since first starting on this game was to see that character creation campfire scene come to life in our new arts, and I'm really happy to see how far it's progressed, and I love seeing that. It's just such an iconic moment. It's the first thing you really see in the game before you get started. And it's amazing.
Can I say all the art? No, I'm just kidding. So we added, like Rob mentioned, we added like an act-specific screen in the front end, and it's basically this large screen where we have like a diorama of each act, and it's amazing to see because it feels like you're really there. Like you can see the detail, you can see every aspect of the scene.
Ej, to wygląda naprawdę fajnie.
That very immersive feeling. So that's probably my favorite part.
I think mine is a little bit more squishy. I think our game has gotten a little scarier. I think that there are certain areas in the game where just the way that the 3D lighting is and the way the sound is, and I play it on a big screen TV sometimes, and just it feels scarier. It feels creepier, a little more claustrophobic in certain areas. That's not just one feature. There's a lot of things going on there. But I think it's really, really cool. I would like to hope that
prawej wybór postaci wygląda ujowo. Zła gra. Nie kupujemy. Nie gramy.
I think the lighting really helps with that too, because we're a 3D game. That's one of the biggest differences between the
Moim zdaniem powinni zrobić z Diablo 2 Diablo 4. Problem solved.
With 3D models built into sprites was not a true real-time lighting system.
Boże, mam nadzieję, że ta postać nie będzie tak tuptała jak tutaj, kurwa. A, dobrze, lepiej. Te postaci szybciej się poruszają, nie? Mi się wydaje.
Experience now because it just feels more immersive with having light react around you like that.
Yeah, I would definitely say, I mean, I've only seen the trailer piece you sent me, but even from that, just seeing like down in
Wydaje płynniej po prostu. Na pewno?
Or any of those like you said, cavern dungeonous zones, the lighting, it was darker and brighter, and then things like the skeletons with the
szybciej, bo gra będzie w 60 FPS-ach. No była w 30, to będą 2 razy szybciej zapierdzielać.
So I haven't seen much more than or anything.
No chyba iluzja, bo był na Zoom Plus, a możliwe. A czekajcie.
And I loved the
Yeah, it was very much and dated. Let's make
Chyba za bardzo przesunąłem.
And I'm just
So we and it's very immersive.
More there are the phobic creator
helps with that games models built into sprites was not a
Czekajcie, jak to można zmierzyć?
The sprites with 3D models built into sprites was not a true real-time lighting system. So because we're pushing that with a 3D graphics engine running on top of the game and getting actual 3D lighting inside of those kind.
Nie, no szybciej wydaje mi się. Że to takie kurwa z dupy będzie, co teraz zrobię, ale...
The game had before.
Zobaczcie. Ona jest teraz na równi z tym, nie? Z tym słupem. Super. Wiem, że to jest głupie, ale... Świetnie. Tylko jeszcze kurwa muszę nauczyć się trafiać guzik.
The original game.
Resetuj.
So what the game had before with the
No kurde, z 1,5 sekundy szła.
Sprites with 3D models built into sprites was not a true real-time lighting system. So because we're pushing that with a 3D graphics true real-time lighting system. So because we're pushing that with a 3D graphics engine.
Dobra, i tu jest mniej więcej też. Nie, dobra, dalej będzie lepiej. No, jednak to będzie dobrze.
So because we're pushing that with a 3D graphics engine running on top of the game and getting.
No tu tak jakby w połowę tego przebiegła. Ona tam idzie, a nie biegnie.
system. So because we're pushing that with
A, faktycznie, dobra. No to mówiłem, że szybciej, zgadza się.
Sorceress Meteor was like gorgeous the most, I think. Just watching like the Sorceress Meteor.
And we're like, oh, like, and 10 minutes would go by and we're like, oh crap, we had a meeting, we were just playing now.
Najważniejsza rzecz jest dziś, czy postacie będą szybciej chodzić. Szczerze, to jest bardzo ważne. Bo to wpływa na dynamikę gry, nie? Dla mnie przykładowo Diablo 1 było nie do grania, ten taki remake, co wyszedł na Gogu, bo te postacie za wolno chodziły i to było zbyt nudne. I dlatego głównym tym statystyką na butach zawsze jest jak największy movement speed.
How players interact, you know, units blocking each other, I mean, all sorts of stuff.
So with multiplayer,
Przyczyniłem się do ogłupiania MKR tym pisaniem.
So PvP
Nie wiem, o czym piszesz.
down to like opening the party window and engaging hostility. Trading is still going to function the same as you know. You know, you can go into games, trade items, or talk in chat channels and things like that.
Mogę
Areas of
tradować itemy.
like I said, going back to my mentioning of reimagining a lot of the UI, improvements to the Battlement lobby. So we're trying to look at some things like improving like how you browse server games. Like, so when you're looking at a game to join and typing passwords and things like that, that's the kind of area we're trying to see how we could smooth out in ways like making sure you can browse normal games, Nightmare games, and Hell games, even though you've graduated to the higher difficulty.
Ciekawe, czy będzie Uber Diablo
Nothing worse than
i Uber Andariel.
killing Bale in Nightmare when you're trying to do Nightmare Bale runs and you're like, I can't find any of the games anymore for Nightmare Bale runs.
But you can if you log into a separate character.
Right, you go to a separate character and then look
that
at
was
it.
kind of our logic, right? We saw, since there are workarounds there, that made it easier for us to make the decision of allowing some of those things. Another change is also looking into reducing ladder seasons overall.
Nie wiem, czy będzie można będzie grać na kompie.
6 months.
Nie wiem.
And we're looking at reducing that.
Mnie to raczej średnio interesi, bo ja i tak na padzie grać nie będę. No pewnie jak na konsoli, jeśli da grać, no to tutaj też się będzie dało, chyba.
And we're looking into like if we make it shorter, we could probably have greater beats throughout the year, as well as seeing people strive harder for getting like that to that level 99, right?
So is there going to be any reward change on that, or will it just simply be, you know, the same standard? You get to 99, you're 99 on that leaderboard, and I mean that's a giant reward in itself. But I don't know if there's any other piece go up on the Battle.net website or something.
We're not looking into adding anything beyond what the game really did, but in some ways there will be some things that kind of come out of because of what we changed. So we have the the leaderboard, right, where you can see each class going to level 99. There are easier ways to filter through that. And we're also looking into saving that, right? So you can always look back to previous seasons as well. So in a way, we're creating that kind of legacy now that has kind of been dropped from the past. So that's one advantage, is your names could be there in the legacy if you look in the past.
I mean, I think that would be cool enough. Just anything to keep it there as like a forever, like this was season 1, season 2, you know? Like that's when I got my 89. Because I know a lot of people like to go and reflect kind of on their old characters and pushes and stuff like that.
Character expiration will not be a thing anymore, by the way.
Ooh,
Due to modern Battle.net integrations, we do not have to. You will not have to worry about refreshing your characters, so they will stay with you.
Awesome. Will there be anything different with like character names then, if that's the case?
Oh, yeah. So this was one that we talked about for a very, very long time. So because we are moving to global servers and we have cross progression, we will allow duplicate names because with everyone being in the same thing across all consoles and all platforms.
Mati, masz Team Labs na streamie, pierdolisz głupoty, większość gier typu Diablo 2 jest lepsza od pierwowzoru, for example Wolcen, odpuść. Spoko.
Appended with your
Padł do HS-a już, okej.
your Battle.net ID or the things like that, so that you are still.
Ale teraz jest jakaś moda na odgrzewanie starych gier, kończą się pomysły. Bardziej ludzie chcą. Blizzard bardzo długo się przed tym wspierał, przecież. Nie chciał zrobić WoW Classica przez wiele, wiele lat. To raczej to, że ludzie nalegają i chcą w to grać.
the concept of US West, US East, Asia regions, and EU are no longer going to be a thing in terms of like being on separated servers. So now, for the push for a global play with Diablo 2, you can now be able to join across people around the world.
I think that's a fantastic change. That's always been one of the like saddest parts is like they're on EU and I'm on, you know, US East and then my other friend's on US West and it's like, how do we get us all together? You know, like, okay, somebody has to make a sacrifice there. And so that seems like a really positive change. So far you guys are killing it. I'm loving it.
There are people to help out too, to help share as much information as possible, which helps a lot with when we're adapting some of these models and whatnot and making new art out of it, because, you know, sometimes those pixels aren't good enough, and if we have some kind of source model to look at, if we have it, now we can make even closer decisions.
On that day when he found that, I think that really helped me greatly. Like, we sent all of that imagery, even the models, I think we sent over to the outsource teams and different art teams, which they used as like a stepping stone. The only piece of art we actually reused one-to-one were Tyrael's wings. So we actually took the Tyrael wings from the old Max file and then just repurposed that for hours. Like, we did very little work, very little modernization of that. We just made it work. But yeah, we did follow a lot of the rules that the old game actually used. For like another example is the succubus in which I think the old Blizzard North model, they reused the assassin mesh for the body, and we did the same thing. We use our assassin mesh for the succubus.
Yeah, a lot of fun discoveries that we're actually kind of making the same decisions on in interesting ways. Another example too, like, is because we found a lot of stuff. There's a lot of old texture files for some environments on the game. So another example is like the walls you see in the Act 2 tombs with those kinds of like paintings on them are the same textures we're using, because we found the source files for those. Any
symbology we have questions on, we always like jump into that archive, try to find some kind of source or reference or something, and we just reuse it as much as possible. We want this to be as true as possible.
That could even carry over to the cinematics too, you know, like a lot of the cinematics cover the same locations. Think of like Tal Rasha's tomb with Bale in front of it, and there's all those runes going on behind him. Finding sources like that to try to match as much as possible was a goal, and I'm glad to say we did find those kinds of things, and they're matching it very well. So it's helping our cinematics too.
There was even concepts we repurposed. Like, we found a couple concepts that were amazing from 20 years ago. The Bloodhawk nest, and we used that completely to rebuild our new asset.
I mean, that's fascinating. I feel like I could just sit here for hours and hours, days, as you guys talk through every single thing you found in the source files.
I could too. I'm still organizing it to this day. I still could find something that could work out. As I put it, I'm very meticulous with this stuff because I love it so much. You know, I'm putting, like, categorizing everything. Like, this is everything I found on War Eve. This is everything I found on the Greater Mummy Monster or Bale or something. And then if Chris comes to me and needs help with like some kind of way of identifying what parts of the creatures are or something, I even go through lengths of like seeing if I could open up those models and actually re-rendering them out in a way that we could actually see it in higher detail, and like, you know, see like what, like, oh, the Greater Mummy is showing like part of his bone on his knee, so we should try to match that or something like that. And there's a lot of interesting stories and references that we actually used to create the new art by re-rendering models out to see everything.
Yeah, it was literally like video game archaeology, and even learning how parts of D1 were made, parts of the code that were commented out. Totally geek out on just all of the, you know, because it's.
To jest boss z drugiego aktu z kanału na początku.
Got into the games industry because of these types of games, and this game in particular, right? Like, and so it's almost like we're treating it like a classic car, right? Like, okay, it probably shouldn't run on leaded gas anymore, but you really can't change it, right? You just got to make it, you know, good enough, even better, you know, than they remember, and good for another 20 years.
Yeah, and
gościu, przestań.
mention of Diablo 1 is very key too. Like, we look at Diablo 1 as well, because
Jak chcesz prowadzić krucjatę, to nie wiem, z Watykanem się skontaktuj i się dogadacie. Oni tam lubili krucjaty robić. Ja krucjat ani nie potrzebuję, ani nie planuję.
So going back to see Diablo 1 and what it's like also helped us make decisions. Even some of the arts too, because like we discovered certain things we didn't even realize before until later down the line. Like an example is in the Chaos Sanctuary, you see a lot of statues with these black knights, and those are actually the same Chaos Knights you see in Diablo 1. So like sometimes some of the things I find, even source files from Diablo 1, were useful for us for reference, so we can make the new statues and things like that.
Even the sorcerer and the Act 3 hireling shared very similar models. Like it was just an addition helmet or a little bit of detail on the chest, but that was really the difference.
You guys need to do a just like
Dziękuję bardzo serdecznie za subeczka. Witam w gronie subskryberków, 63 miesiąc.
some point where you just sit down and talk through all of this, because this is like the most fascinating stuff I've heard. I mean, I've played so much
Można zorganizować na fanpage twoim jakiś zbiór na Blizzard.
of the game, but like when there's like more to be discovered, it's like, oh man, I'm like itching to know. So I would
That's
love
the funny
to
thing.
just listen.
The funny thing is, like, you know, going back to our like core philosophies on the game, like, you know, we wanted to keep discovery and the mystery and stuff. Because you keep discovering things all the time when you play Diablo 2, like all these little hidden rules and informations. It kind of carries that fascination over through development as well. Like we find a lot of things in the code, design documents, models, things like that, that were really fascinating to see, like how they were made. And I learned something new every day on the projects.
One thing, shifting back to
To się liczą te miesiące dalej?
I know there's definitely going to be questions around security. How are we handling duping? How are we handling bots? How are we handling, just anything around that, realm downs, and all of the disconnects and all of that good stuff that we deal with online? What's being taken, or what actions?
Co się nie podoba dla ludzi?
So moving over to
I don't care.
To say it's, Loctite, I wouldn't dare do that. That's like throwing a gauntlet down to the community to try to break it. But all of that should be far more secure now. Now, we do still allow you to play offline, right? You will need to authenticate that your copy is legit, but after that, you won't be bothered. And so there's a reason why we leave those characters quarantined.
O, wieża hrabiny.
I mean, yeah, we have a server team working on it, and these are some of their efforts, right? We want to stop the bots, stop duping, as much as possible. There's a lot of strides happening in the back end of things.
So, I'm excited to play this game, and I'm sure a lot of other people are very excited. How can we sign up for this closed beta, and when will this game be coming out?
Actually, we will be doing a technical alpha, and you can sign up on our webpage today for future waves of invites. As for the game itself, it will be releasing 2021.
Well, I just want to say thank you to the remastering team right here. I absolutely am blown away.
Jak nazywała się ta karcianka, którą streamowałem przed Crossloadem? Duel of Champions.
You guys are putting into this game and just into Diablo 2. I've loved Diablo 2 for 20 years, and I never thought that the game could get better. But I think you guys are respecting the integrity while upgrading and adding and improving. And I think this is going to overall just better the game. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate you having me
Tak,
on.
to była gadka, że fajnie jakby odświeżyli Diablo, jest remaster, to dlaczego nie remake, dlaczego tego nie inaczej? Ja też tego nie potrafię skumać, nie? Tym bardziej, że 4 za rogiem, więc...
For 20 years, like that's...
To jest dla mnie poza możliwościami zrozumienia.
See the passion in what you do, in what your colleagues do, like... So thank you even more. And thanks for coming to do this. This was fun.
No i co? I to tyle. Tak naprawdę. Na dzisiaj to wszystko. Jutro pytania i odpowiedzi do Hearthstone'a i do Diablo. I tyle. Jakieś tak mało. Zauważyłem, ale czy to sprawia... Okej, to nie do mnie. A, zauważyłem, ale czy to sprawia, że nie mogę wyrazić swojej opinii? Mylisz troszkę pojęcia, nie? Bo wyrażenie swojej opinii to jest, kurde, ta gra jest za droga. I tyle. A ty od godziny albo 30 minut co najmniej prowadzisz jakąś krucjatę, że ta gra jest za droga, nie? To nie jest wyrażenie swojej opinii. To wiesz, to są dwie różne rzeczy, nie? No i co? No i w sumie gówno, nie? Tak jak mówiłem, BlizzCon do dupy, ale mi pasuje, bo się dowiedziałem dużo fajnych rzeczy o fajnych grach. Więc zadowolony jestem. A, Cast when drawn. Summon free man click who internal attacks the enemy hero. No to nawet spoko. Takie mało grywalne, ale spoko. On wyraża swoją opinię do bólu. No nie wiem. Teraz i tak standard ceny za gry to 60 euro, więc te 40 masz idealnie za odgrzewanego kotleta. Może tak być, Brzesiu, Grzesiu. Czemu tutaj coś jeszcze mamy? Everything you need to know about Hearthstone Mercenaries Game Mode. O, to jest ciekawe. Zobaczmy sobie. Czyli tak, zaczynasz tutaj i masz ścieżkę, idziesz lewo, prawo. Jak pójdziesz prawo, na przykład w tym przypadku, to idziesz prosto do Spirit Healera i do bossa później. Jak idziesz lewo, to masz tutaj Spirit Healer albo to. Tu masz takie, albo takie, albo takie. Tu masz takie. Ciekawe. Hearthstone Mercenaries is upcoming game mode that focuses on elements that roguelike and tactical RPG. Here is everything we know about the mode so far. During phase 1 of the Year of the Griffon, you will not use your collection for this mode. According to Ben, it is Hearthstone take on Slay the Spire. Okej, czyli Slay the Spire po prostu. There is no deck building in Hearthstone Mercenaries. Progression is permanent. To jest interesujące. Mercenaries are lifeblood of the boat. You will assemble your chosen character in 3-person squad to progress through levels. Each mercenary has access to different abilities, giving you a wide range of strategies to try. Mercenaries have levels. When you level a mercenary, they get stronger and will obtain new abilities. Your abilities can also earn experience to level up. Can equip gear that they find in the runs. This gear makes them stronger to find certain pieces of each merc. You find more mercenaries by playing the game. Each run gives you random generated map. You will find different types of event and branching path. Fights, elite encounters, no combat events are all possible if you complete. All for Hearthstone Mercenaries is large PvE mode, game mode. There are also PvP aspects. Other players in strategic combat with your squad. Czyli co, mogę trafić albo na PvE, albo na PvP w tym? Kurwa, ciekawe. You and your opponent will both queue up moves at the same time. You won't know what they are going to do. No nie, to chyba coś innego. You don't have a full list of them yet. Styrion, Sylvana, King, Ragnaros, Grul, Valera. Illidan, Rexar. Nie wiem, strasznie to dziwne się wydaje być. Takie niezrozumiałe, ale jednocześnie ciekawe. Czyli z tego BlizzCon najbardziej podoba ci się to, co wprowadzają do Hearthstone'a? Tak, zdecydowanie. Ludzie pisali, że to będzie BlizzCon imienia Diablo, nie? W moim przekonaniu to był BlizzCon imienia Hearthstone'a. No do Hearthstone'a wprowadzili bardzo dużo rzeczy, czy bardzo dużo rzeczy może pokazali bardziej. Więc ja, jeżeli chodzi o Hearthstone'a, 10 na 10, nie? Jeżeli chodzi o BlizzCon, no to takie 5 na 10 trochę. Druga rzecz to Diablo. No o Diablo, szczerze powiedziawszy, strasznie mało, straszna lipa. Bo mamy co? Diablo Deep Dive, to co słuchaliśmy przed chwilą. To jest streszczenie tego. Streszczenie tego. No okej, no dobra, tu jest dużo informacji o tej grze, no ale no nie ma tutaj jakichś takich chyba konkretnych informacji, tak mi się wydaje. Znaczy no też chyba nie ma po prostu o czym jakichś konkretnych informacji dawać. No nie chcę mi się tego już czytać, bo jest późno. Tutaj mamy o Diablo Immortal trochę. The next testing phase will introduce a new class and will be available to more players for a long period of time. No tutaj o Diablo 4 to tragedia, totalna tragedia, nie? Postać zapowiedzieli to w sumie tyle. Tak na dobrą sprawę, nie, PvP jeszcze zapowiedzieli, okej. No nie wiem, no trochę mało tych informacji, no bo tam te wszystkie inne pierdolinki to mnie tam guzik interesują, jakieś Burning Crusade. No Burning Crusade, no to co mogą powiedzieć? No siema, wypuściłem Burning Crusade, będzie wyglądał tak jak 15 lat temu. I to jest tak naprawdę wszystko. No to fajnie wygląda, no, całkiem ciekawie. Całkiem ciekawie to wygląda. No ale tak na dobrą sprawę, no to tyle, nie? Kurde, jutro chcę trochę filmu o tym chyba przygotować, a to chyba jest zabójcze trochę. Dobra, macie jakieś pytania?